Hi everyone, this is Nadia Andreeva from spinachandyoga.com, and today we have an amazing woman that I'm going to interview, Dr. Tracy Thomas. Tracy has a PhD in psychology and she's a therapist to celebrities, so it usually costs, when she told me that it costs up to $70,000 a month to work with her, I was like, whoa. So it's a very rare opportunity that all of us have to pick Tracy's brain today for free. So thank you, Tracy, for being with us.
Hi, Nadia. Great to be here.
Tracy has a growing online presence, and she has a website, and she's been on TV a lot. So Tracy is really a go-to person when it comes to addictions, and to a topic that I think more and more people are becoming aware is a relationship with self. So Tracy calls herself a relationship specialist, including to the relationship when it comes our own relationship with self. So Tracy, we're going to talk today about a topic that I think most people misunderstand about self-care. Let's first define it, because I think when we think of self-care, it's like, well, I brush my teeth, I kind of take a shower. I drag my body to the gym once in a while. And is this really what qualifies as self-care?
Yeah. Yeah. Nadia, this is such a great question because in my work for years in the addiction field and with eating disorders and mood disorders and people really struggling, it sort of all started to turn out to be that I was noticing the root issue.
Yeah.
And really, it's all sort of come down to helping people have a great relationship with themselves. And when we think of self-care, which is a term we've all heard, and we really think we know what it means. And for a lot of people, it's sort of like maybe it's more massages or pedicures or, it could be certain things that they think of when they think of self-care. And you're hearing that all the time too in the media, self-care, self-care. And it's what I look at it as is it's a much more intimate, super intuitive, connected relationship with self. And it goes to the heart of what you do and how you work with your clients and your audience. It's really about knowing oneself so deeply at every layer, not the first default layer, not the second maybe when you check in, but maybe 4 layers or more where you say, no, really, what do I need and what do I want in this moment? And so it's very
away from general idea of self-care,
Sure.
like get more massages, more towards individual, what would actually feel like taking care of myself right now.
Right. And it's a real self-leading and self-loyal connection to self. It's sort of, first of all, it's exploratory. Mm-hmm. And, we have all these default responses that come from the culture we're in and the many energetic layers we're all connected to. So knowing oneself takes a tuning in and really think like, it's not as much effort as we might think that we need to do a lot of things to care for ourselves. It's not that we don't do things, but it's much more about being and knowing what's really appropriate for you and helpful for you at any moment.
Yeah. And when we spoke before, not on Skype,
mm-hmm.
you mentioned another thing that really resonated with me is that taking good care of yourself means being there for yourself. Can you elaborate a little bit on what do you mean by being there for
mm-hmm.
yourself?
Sure. And this again, it's very deep and it's a spiritual practice really that evolves over time and truly deepens over time and becomes less and less effort. But what that really means is if we think about all the people that we love and people that we want to support, including our own audiences, and we want to make sure that we're there for people and that they know that they love us or that we love them. And we tend to think of being there for other people, but being there for oneself is what I consider the most deep spiritual practice that there is.
And that not a lot of us do.
And it took me a long time. I really, worked on myself for years and years to really be able to create a life that was incredibly enjoyable and fulfilling. And it really did bring me along a continuum of connecting so deeply to myself by showing up in each moment, which kind of feels like a third person experience where like I have an advocate with me. I've got this person that is taking care of this self called Tracy.
Yeah.
So I entertain myself with that too. It's like I'm going to take Tracy for a run and I'm going to give Tracy, a good meal, and I'm going to allow Tracy to digest fully and
I
things
like
like that. So,
that.
exactly. So, and that applies to everything. Every single moment. If it's an invitation to something, you might have a response that says, of course that sounds fun. But if you're checking in 2-3 layers deep to that and you really think, okay, let me think about Tracy and this self that I'm taking care of.
Yeah.
And what is really true for her out of all the things I'm doing in a day or something like that or a week, what is really a great way of showing up for myself? And sometimes, and more often than not, it's saying yes to only things that are really sustaining for me and then just some other time to other things rather than saying no to anything, which I don't do.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to really exploring this relationship with self is how much do we use the body throughout the day, or how much do we use the mind throughout the day, and then what do we give back?
It's so important because if we're showing up for ourselves and if we're truly self-caring, uh, you think about your central nervous system and it's firing all day long, even with the most lovely moment you could be experiencing, you're still processing and your body is working. And having a sense, as I know you help your audience tune into, of truly how much output and like output your body can do, your body, mind, spirit, and also how much input without feeling, drained and feeling havocked and things like that. So that's all very individual for each person.
Yeah, of course. And another thing that I'm hearing is because it's so individual, sometimes doing a general thing that's considered a healthy self-care might not work. So for a woman who has a million things on a to-do list, telling her go take a yoga class might feel like an additional stressful experience. So that would not be taking care of self.
That's right. That's right. So there is no one prescription that fits all. And it's evolving day to day and moment to moment. In a week, so perhaps like in a week that I was providing for myself last week, there were many things that I wanted to give Tracy and give her and have these experiences. And so I couldn't, it's not kind to Tracy to do every single thing that I might be able to do and process.
Yeah.
And so the truth was there was less yoga that I gave her, but it's okay because I gave her other nurturing experiences and didn't run her down. And yoga will be here this week and there's room for it. And it's not, then I'm not relating to it in a way that I'm having to do it.
Yeah.
It's available for me, and this week I'm more available for yoga.
Exactly. So it's not an extra checkpoint on a to-do list. It's more of why am I doing it? So it's not doing yoga for the sake of doing yoga, but doing yoga because it serves you at this right moment.
Or doing it out of fear. Right. So I really help my clients, and I really helped myself learn to what I call not traumatizing myself with anything, including things that are supposedly good for me. So and believe me, I used to have a great habit of making even going to yoga traumatic. Like, should I? Shouldn't I? I know it, so rather than letting it be this beautifully intuitive thing that I want to give myself at intervals that feel very organic to me, and that comes from taking moments to tune in where I'm putting down technology and I'll think to myself, is today, does yoga feel like a yes for Tracy?
Yeah.
And like that just and that's beautifully fun because I never know what the answer is going to be.
Yep. I like that. Okay, so let's, before we move more into how to really find what would constitute self-care for any
Sure.
given person, what are the signs of a self-care crisis? Like, how
Yes.
would a person know that they're not taking care of themselves?
Right. Right. And that's such a great question, Nadia, because it's really tricky in that in our culture now where we are just super people doing so many things, and the media really the technology that we have access to allows us to be constantly processing and accessing new and interesting information, and people are traveling more than ever, and there's just another level of productivity that I think our culture has as a standard now. So it is
It's an
very
expectation.
right. It's just sort of like, work is just the lines are blurred.
Yeah.
How appropriate blurred lines, right, with everything. So it's hard to know unless one has a sense of feeling things like some examples are like it's not healthy and normal to be tired
All the
all the
time.
time.
Yes.
Even though the culture would say like we're martyrs for how tired we are. Clearly the body that is out of all the signals that since we were infants, such a critical signal. If we think about when we were children, or if any of us that have children, when the baby is tired, they're literally like crying,
Yeah.
really upset. And so we just tend to push through that and override the body's signals, and the body will communicate in more way. It'll find more ways to tell us that it's being pushed too much.
Yeah.
So being tired, even sometimes for people, they can become overly emotional, cognitively impaired, angry, intolerant, and then have a whole host of medical symptoms that are happening. And one of the big ones for people is emotional eating, weight gain. And I think the primary thing that is like emotional eating and the prevalence of it in our culture is absolutely based in the fact that we're not caring for ourselves. We're not resting either with a good night's sleep or just resting throughout our day-to-day life.
Yeah. And I think that also happens because the society has such high expectations for us. We feel guilty about taking a break and
Yes.
resting.
Afraid.
Yeah.
Yes, people feel, I mean, truly, the alert system is saying, our alert system that is there to help us. It helped our ancestors ward off threats and things like that. And it's on alert for, don't feel happiness, don't feel joy, don't rest your
Be
system because,
productive.
yes, don't take a break because essentially we experience it as we will not survive it.
Yeah.
And so even things like joy and just happiness, people feel immediate, like the moment following that feels very threatening, like you're not on guard. So restoration throughout our day-to-day life feels very threatening to people. And so it's very counterintuitive to think of yourself as a self that you want to sustain throughout the lifespan, let alone a week or a day,
Yeah.
and care for yourself in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's also what you mentioned before about ignoring the urge of the body to rest. In general, gets people to the point where they don't feel the body, because when they do feel it, it
Yes.
doesn't feel good.
It's
So,
numbed, right? We're
yeah,
numbed
so
out.
they desensitize the body, and then ignoring main urges usually leads for people to ignore more and more urges, like
That's right.
an urge to go to the bathroom because they're in a rush.
Isn't that, yes.
And that rolls like a snowball, and yes, gets people completely disconnected from their body, so they're only in their head, and the head
Absolutely.
decides what to eat, when to rest, how much to work.
Yes.
And when they start to feel the body, it's just like, how hungry am I have no idea.
That I would say for all the clients that I work with in the area of sort of with what we call eating dysfunction or just a disconnection to that, connecting back to hunger cues is one of the biggest pieces of work, and I'm sure you're familiar with that. And just as an example in learning my own psychology and cultivating a more and more intimate relationship with myself over time, which is what I then apply to the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I would get home, be tired from work, because partly the way I was working was punishing rather than having an entire day that included breaks and kindness to myself.
Yeah.
So I'd get home, and the evening was ahead of me, and I was tired, and I didn't want to lose the whole evening. So I would override, instead of just maybe taking a nap or meditating for a little bit or something, I would push through. My body would get a second wind, but then I would be hungry all night. Like I'd be wanting to eat all night. And what would be happening is, if my body was saying to me, "Oh, if you're gonna push me, we're gonna need some energy for this. You're gonna need to keep me awake through this activity and the energy that I get from it." And then you're sort of wide awake later than you want to be, and the cycle is just it's a vicious one, where then your body starts to have hormonal imbalance or chronic fatigue and a whole host of things that people are experiencing that they think are the problem, and they're really the symptom.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think this fear of missing something out at night instead of
Absolutely.
taking a break is a huge one, which I think what basically it comes down to, if I am more rested, if I am taking care better of myself, I can actually enjoy things so much more. And sleeping one night early is really not going to take a huge chunk out of your life.
Well, it's such a great point. I mean, they have the term now in the culture, like, called FOMO, right?
Yeah.
Fear of missing out. And it's great because on one hand, we're just excited to be alive, and things are interesting, and we have access to so many things. And I don't think we think of ourselves enough as like there's this entire lifespan, and as they say, the marathon versus the sprint, and the pacing that would go along if you were taking care of another person and you thought, okay, they've got like 80 something years, ideally, and thinking about how we'd want to train that person or to care for that person, it's a whole different way of looking at it. So one of the symptoms of feeling, to think like, well, how do we know we're in a self-care crisis? Chronic lack of fulfillment, I think, is one of the biggest pieces, because people are not enjoying anything when they try to do everything.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. So, okay, we're in a self-care crisis. How do we start taking care of ourselves?
Yeah. So here's the steps for it. So first of all, what I like to say is, like, just if we take today, like, and I do this all the time for myself. I always decide, first of all, let's think there a general way that the audience let's just inaugurate ourselves to the fact that you've been elected the president of yourself. Okay. So it's time for everybody to it's a beautiful thing, but it's also an important reality check. There is a self, it's yours, however it's feeling and whatever level of health it has, that is on us. And so if we can just agree that is, that we're not having things happen to us, we're actually cultivating the experience
we're responsible.
That we're having. So not from a fear place, but from a very what a great and awesome exploration that we're on. So if we accept that role and we accept that responsibility, if we think about ourselves, if I take today, and so this is the first day I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking, so for the rest of the day, what does it look like? What do I already have on the schedule? Or if we probably easier if everybody's starting tomorrow. And if there are things on the schedule that somebody has, I'd like everybody to just take a moment and look at what the intention is behind those. Are they default things that are being done? Do they have, what is your purpose for doing them? Is it a people-pleasing purpose? Is it just because you've always done it? Or is it really true to what is actually most significant and meaningful to you? If there's something on the schedule upcoming, I invite you to just change it up. I don't say no to things. I just say, I'm going to say yes to the things that are true for me. Mm-hmm. So finding your truth in that. So every morning when somebody wakes up, the idea is to connect with oneself, explore the moment, and see, what is it that I want to give? For me, I said, what do I want to give Tracy today? Mm-hmm. Okay. So for me, that answer is a beautiful exploration every morning, but for the most part, the answer is enjoyment. So
Right.
that's a baseline. So what does that look like? And then I'll start connecting to that. So it's like choosing exactly what is the most important today, no matter how many things get sent my way. I'll know that that's somebody else's agenda, and I already have my stuff. So I don't have to take everybody's stuff as my stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just, those are just, I mean, this small piece of it. If you're answering the phone every time it rings, or if you're responding to every single text that comes in, I think like you're not essentially living in the connected relationship. You're very much,
Outside.
yes. It's so if the phone does ring or the text message does come through, doesn't mean you might not notice it, but if you were answering it or if you're responding to it, what is that about for you? Is that about fear? Is that about people pleasing?
Yeah.
So, Nadia, you can see that I could go on. Like, there's so many aspects to this because it's as nuanced as anything. Because it might also be that I put the phone in the other room for 2 hours because I'm going to give Tracy 2 hours of presence.
Yeah, mental break.
Right. Like, and I think of it as just I'm giving her presence, and so it is as varied as anything because it's a moment to moment connection
Yeah.
to what is true, what serves you, what is kind and loving. And if there's fear, then for me, that I don't allow that to be a motivation. That's a dysfunctional motivation for doing anything in my experience. So those are just some examples. And in everybody's day-to-day life, it's going to be very different what it looks
Yeah.
like for them.
And I think to give people just a better idea, I'll guide them through
Great.
my thing.
Wonderful.
Because I have a very similar ritual, and that's why I think it's so important to share people and to get people, to encourage them to have something like a similar ritual. So my ritual is before I get out of bed is I clearly imagine how I would like to feel in the body, and it's usually kind of the same thing, but I still ask.
Yeah.
So it's usually like feeling light, feeling feminine, feeling graceful. And then I ask my body, how can I support you so those feelings come into existence?
Yeah. I love it.
And usually it's the same. It's like an exploration, and usually I'll get an answer in terms of a intuition. It's like you just suddenly know what you need to do. And it can be a walk outside, or like I really want to be dressed nicely today.
Right. Sure.
And lately it's been like I want rose oil. I just knew like I wanted rose oil. And Brahmi tea throughout the day. Brahmi tea is like, it's similar to gotu kola. And I think because it's kind of a very focus inducing herb, I'm just really loving it lately. And it kind of came very internally, like, that's what I want.
Sure.
And I think you guys watching it, try to experiment with either Tracy's way or my way, because they're very similar, and just try to create that dialogue early on in the morning. It can be very powerful in terms of connecting to your intuition, and just throughout the day, actually knowing what you need to do to support your body.
Yeah. And Nadia, if I can add, I think it's for when people are starting out to know that it can be many, many layers to get to just the truth. And it may sound like more of an effort than I mean to, but to know that our default responses when we haven't spent a lot of time connecting to ourselves, those are maybe coming from an ego place and things like that. So allowing, if it's sort of like, should I go see Stacy today, or should I say yes to that invitation? And that might be, the first answer might be yes. And then when I check deeper, it might be, I'd love to see Stacy, and I'd love to see Tracy more. And so I'm not saying no to Stacy, but I'm saying yes to something about myself. But it may take me a few moments of tuning in to know what the answer is to something, or allow for the not knowing and let that be, let that coexist as well.
And I think you're right. It's completely about creating that space and letting for something to come up versus trying to force it out.
That's right. That's right.
And I
And then
think,
I have fun with it too, Nadia.
yeah,
That's the important part I want to share with everybody is it's really fun to get to know oneself on that level. You think, wow, that's interesting. What, like you said, what just came up out of an intuitive thing? You, like, where does that come from? And just the joy of that.
yeah, and I think what you mentioned about sometimes things will take a little bit of time
Hmm.
is also 100% correct, because if we spend 30 years never
Sure.
feeling the body and never trying to create that dialogue, same as in any relationship, the body is not
That's
going to be
right.
like, "Hey, you, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you." It's going to be like, "Hey, you didn't
It's got
talk
to
to me
wake up.
for 30 years."
Yes, it's got to wake up, and it's like, oh, we're gonna enjoy more by doing less but having it be true and meaningful.
Yeah,
It will take time to adjust to that because it's been on hyperdrive.
yeah,
So,
and
but it's lovely, and then you're going to feel a lot differently in your life once you get your body on board.
yeah. So the last question is, since you're working with people so much around this issue, what shifts do you start seeing in people when they start experimenting with this?
Yes. So again, it's as varied as you can imagine because you're talking about your entire existence of being a human being. So some very significant things are cortisol levels drop, right? So your central nervous system isn't constantly running. And so it's because when it's running, it believes that you're in stress, and
Mm-hmm.
stress means danger to the body. It's counting on your thinking processes because it doesn't know the difference between a thought and, actual real danger in a given moment. So the central nervous system calms, cortisol levels drop, hormonal levels that were out of balance, trying to keep up with that, they start to regulate themselves a lot of the time. Clearly, like, skin and all the different ways in which our body communicates health or unhealthiness start to show up. So a
Mm-hmm.
glow, your eyes are clearer and whiter and things like that. I think one of the most important ones is that life is more fulfilling and enjoyable and meaningful, and your emotions are balanced because you're not in this heightened alert state, like
Yeah.
where your body thinks things are dangerous. So imagine the level of tolerance for what's going on in life. And I would say the biggest one is happiness. There's just a lot of happiness. Like if you just think about an infant, when they're tired and hungry, they're crying, and when they're nurtured, they're happy.
Yeah.
So we're in charge of our little baby selves, basically.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think it also brings us in a place of integrity with ourselves,
Mm.
integrity with our own
Yeah.
body.
Yes, because when we say, if somebody's asking us something or we're committing to something or even just telling somebody something that they want to hear, that is coming from a place that the body believes it's a threat, or we would not be lying. We would not
Yeah.
be performing. And so all of these things, which are, what I was going to say is, in fact, I help people understand me, and I help my clients help their family members and friends understand them by using this kind of language, which is, that sounds like a really great opportunity, and I'm going to be taking care of Tracy that day and focusing on these things. So you're not saying no, and you're not saying that you don't care about people, but you're really connecting to the truth of yourself. And what that does for other people is it just allows them to feel that integrity from you too, which doesn't mean they will like everything that you're always saying, but there's something over the long term about being in
Yeah.
integrity, in all ways, that really serves everyone around you without having to reach out and care for them. It is a way to care for people. Like, Nadia, if I could say my basic premise is that self-care, which is the same to me as self-love, is absolutely the highest form of love there is.
I agree.
It's the
Because
happier
you're
I
in a
am,
better place to actually help
absolutely.
others.
In my family, I feel that one of the things I want to give to them is I want to be happy so that there's happiness in my family.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I actually spoke with one of my clients today, and I told her that since I was a kid, my parents taught me that being selfish is the highest form of altruism.
Isn't that great?
So taking care of you is the best way to take care of others, because it just
Yes.
puts you in a position where you feel inspired and you feel strong enough to do so.
Yes. And it shows that the culture does, the culture doesn't necessarily support that, because we're very familiar at this point with love that comes through dysfunction and struggle. It means that if you're unwell and I support you, you somehow feel loved by me. But if I am showing up in enjoyment and happiness and fulfillment and wellness, people, there's an adjustment too for families and relationships to know how to just support each other's wellness.
Yeah.
So that if I say I'm going to take care of Tracy today and I'll see you on another day, that somebody knows that that's an act of love for me and them. And it's a very counterintuitive paradigm, but it's one that I hope to change in the culture throughout my lifetime.
And thank you for doing that. So if people want to find you in the online world, where's your online home?
Yes, so you can find me at www.drtracythomas.com, which is drtracythomas.com.
Okay, great. And we'll post the link below the video. So Tracy, thank you so much for being and sharing your wisdom with us.
Nadia, can I add one more thing before we go?
Yeah, of
Is
course.
that okay? So I wanted to just let the viewers know that, so when I worked at a celebrity rehab treatment center, it was $70,000 a month for people who wanted a single room there. So it's not as much as, that's not how much it is to work with me at this point. But this advice was what people were paying for at this council. And so that's what I wanted to make sure that people knew, that that my counsel is not $70,000 a month anymore.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So people, don't be afraid to contact Tracy.
Yes, and I love to support people.
Yeah, she's taking She has online coaching program. She works over the phone, so she's there to support you.
Yes, great to meet everybody and talk to everybody.
Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, all right.